but I think there may be racist just because I'm human, they don't want my help. It seems it doesn't really matter if your superpower's firing through the belt. I tried to join the Justice League, but Batman was a douche to me, and Black Canary wouldn't tell me hi. And Plastic Man just threw a middle finger that was 30 stories high. I got a message from the great Mix Avengers. They offered me a membership, but I didn't.
Hello, welcome to And Now Comics. I'm Lou Gonzalez. Joining me this week, we have the Double Johns.
Hey.
Hi.
Welcome to the Quibi Stand podcast.
And by Quibi Standards, this podcast is now over. That's how long they are, right?
I read that Vulture article today, and I had no idea that Reno 911 show was on Quibi. I heard about that show being made, and I just assumed it wasn't out yet.
1.75 billion. That's how much money they put into it.
On nothing?
Yes.
And no one cares.
Yeah.
I honestly, I had to joke that's it's with Pennyworth and things I forget exist and continue to happen. Unless I see somebody talking about Quibi or see a commercial, it doesn't exist. I've never heard anybody talk about it or that they see it. I just don't understand how it happens.
I know.
On the flip side, I got my free Comcast digital streaming box where I got to get a preview of Peacock.
What an unfortunate name.
Oh, their intro message was thank you for joining the flock. I was like, cool. Oh, you have every old universe.
It could be worse. It could be thank you for hopping on our cock.
Nah. But it is weirdly there are cool things on it because they have the entire Universal backlog, back catalog. So they've every Universal monster movie is on there. They have I think they have a shit ton of Hitchcock stuff on there too, because I guess Universal owned his stuff.
Oh, Universal dropped a lot of Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, so there's a section. It's Hitchcock and thriller, and it's just all Hitchcock and Universal monster movies, including the Abbott and Costello ones. It's I was I guess if this is a great way for them to try to see if there's actually interest in their dark universe that they've continued to try to push.
Oh, no.
The dark universe. I'm looking at this list of just what they are having and what they're planning.
Also, before we continue, we should mention Alan's here as well.
Yeah, I'm back.
And
yes, Alan's here.
It only took about a year.
I don't know. But yeah, Alan's back, and so we're gonna go over some quick news topics, and then get into we read Hellblazer. So we were talking about there's been I don't know what the term is now, but comics, games, and wrestling has kind of, I think it's the other shoe has kind of, or actually the first shoe has kind of dropped with wrestling, I feel because I feel there's been big names, but there's not been mega names. It's nothing really WWE.
I mean, it's basically some of the biggest names in the UK scene, which were very much of a focal point of NXT UK, of WWE's UK NXT division. And yeah, it's just what a, we were talking about before, that comics had their thing, and I'm yeah, man, I didn't really kind of follow it because there was just so much news coming from the wrestling and game side. I felt every day that was just hard to get keep up at a certain point.
Yeah, and I think they were happening simultaneously, and then gaming or competitive gaming had a bunch of stuff too.
Oh my god. And then all the fighting game stuff, I forgot about that part.
Evo is canceled.
Evo's canceled. Well, and this was leading up to ahead of time where Luthier God, who's a complete idiot, said some dumb shit, and then F Champ, who's always been a dumbass, said some dumb shit and he got banned. And so it's it's the tournament that brought back Infiltration when they really shouldn't have, got canceled before Infiltration got canceled from Evo. So it's I don't know, man. It's really fun. It's just weird. And that. Evo is one of the biggest fighting game tournaments in the world. And it's been kind of a big part of fighting games for so long. And like hopefully they restructure that company into like something good. Because I mean, like last year, like a bunch of people got roofied at some evil party.
What the fuck?
Like, yeah, like that happened last year. It's like, or like the fact that there's just like always stories about like women being treated really badly within the fighting scene, and this is just kind of like all coming to a head. And that's not to say that like it's only the fighting game scene. It's like it's very obvious over the last couple of weeks. It's been in the comic scene, like.
Yeah.
I follow Alex DeCampi, and Alex DeCampi is basically just like a well of knowledge for like. Yeah, like let me tell you about all the really shitty people I've dealt with in the comic books industry, and I'm just not going to give the biggest fuck about it.
Yeah, the two big ones that were Lobdell, who did Red Hood like for I don't know the past forever years and's been at DC for forever, and then Warren Ellis, which was like kind of sucky because I like a lot of Warren Ellis' shit.
Yeah.
Also, Scott Lobdell had been writing Red Hood and the Outlaws since New 52,
yeah,
and a bunch of other titles that were not good, and we're not even close to what his hits were at Marvel.
Yeah, it's just been like super depressing, and like I feel like wrestling and comics kind of are in the same area because of like how long they've been around, and it's been like, oh, they've been such a like literal boys club, and they're like it's like a very super niche, and women have kind of not been a big part for many reasons, bad reasons for a long time. So like there's that. Where I think when it comes to the gaming stuff, like the community and the people involved are so much younger. I feel like it'll be easier to cut out the cancer because it's like a newer thing where like
I don't think so.
I mean, this is just my perspective that like it's almost like built into comics, like it is to Hollywood and into wrestling, like the problems.
I think that all these industries suffer from the same problems that like every industry suffers from, where it's just like friends who hire friends and try and keep a workplace area as a gentleman's club and less like a business. And it's like you hear stories from like the gaming industry all the time. It's not even just like women that are treated horribly, but it's like also just like the amount. It's like how many companies or how many games have you like heard about coming out over the last couple of years that also at the same time like press around those games about coming out are also like, hey, like let's talk about the absolute amount of crunch and physical and mental toll that like the workers like took while making those games. Like it happened with Borderlands, happened with it happened with
everything with Rockstar.
Everything with Rockstar.
Naughty Dog.
Also,
Dog.
Speaking of Last of Us, y'all need to stop, but I'll save that for when we're done talking later.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes like there's like so many different levels because you have like the toxic fandom, like internet fandom, which is like horrible in so many ways. Then you have, which is a problem, and then you have like kind of the more, I don't want to like diminish that part, but like kind of the more important part, which is the actual inside the industry, where it's like the ability to get jobs, the ability to work, and then when you are working, like dealing with like the most toxic and like abusive working environment you can think of, and sometimes worse than that.
And it's like all about like connections of people. Like it's a lot of like these stories that have been coming out are all like I met X curator at X convention when I was like a teenager trying to get into the business, and this person said that they would offer me like some jobs and some help, and it ended up being like this grooming situation. Like,
and that's the whole Ellis thing, but that's been like a lot of people. And I think in the comic industry where that's like connected to gaming, it's like, well, these are super nerds that have never had power or influence with women now having it, and they do the grossest and worst things possible. Where wrestling is like a weird other like cult. Like,
yeah, I think the thing that people are like slowly like realizing over the last couple of weeks is that all the industries are like the things that happen in an industry is like not insular. Like these are happening in like everyone's workplace. This is happening in every industry, and it's like and people are like, well, I can't enjoy anything now because now it's like like one of my favorite wrestlers, Joey Ryan, like ended up being like revealed as this like massive scumbag. Like this company I really love called Chikara that like basically like 2000s era Chikara is like one of my favorite points in pro wrestling ever. And it's like that company shut down, and the guy who ran the company ended up putting out a huge apology video and was, had trainers and himself accused of like sexual misconduct. And it's just like what it's like. I could easily just be like someone who's just like, well, I'm not going to enjoy anything. It's like, well, instead, it's like, look at yourself, look how you've interacted with people over the years, and think about the marginalized people who work at your current place of business, and try and figure out like maybe ways of like helping everyone within your workplace. And I think that's just like the thing that it's like people I think should take as a lesson.
Yeah. And we don't want to get like too dour. Was there anything else on this specific topic we wanted to go through? Because there are like a couple other like news stories.
I also just want to say about Warren Ellis is like I even brought it up on this podcast before that Warren Ellis, while writing Excalibur, totally wrote a story where his self-insert character had sex with a virginal teenage Kitty Pryde.
Yeah, I heard about that. That was
in 1993. So it's like the stuff about like Warren Ellis, grooming women is like, it's like I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and that's like you talked about. It's like it is a hard thing to separate like the art from the artist, and you try to do it the best you can, especially like going back now and watching like movies or TV shows or reading books and comics. And
God, I
think
so
I just will.
Like I had a conversation with my sister about because she's like a huge Harry Potter fan. It's like Christ. It's like J.K. Rowling just like basically lost her mind.
Yeah, at least like as of right now, hasn't like physically assaulted anybody or sexually assaulted.
But the stuff she's coming out and saying.
She's like basically sharing stories and using her clout to basically go out of her way to try and harm trans people as much as she can possibly do.
Mm-hmm. So we haven't done a comic show in a while. So I think it's been like a
or closed.
Yeah. So since we've been gone, a couple weeks ago, Denny O'Neil passed away. Famous, writer. One of the main writers to him and Neil Adams writing Hard Traveling Heroes and like a whole bunch of other awesome stuff. And he was 81. I think he passed away like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, June 12th. But I guess on some lighter news, like I guess I want to touch on the one I just posted first because like the movie, I don't know what you want to call it, came out on Friday. But like Hamilton on Disney Plus.
Oh,
I haven't watched it yet.
It's so good. I'm not a big musical person, but I'm a history person, and it's long. It's 2.5 hours, which is slightly longer than some of the movies we've done on Watch Party. But it's so good. And I think, or I hope it changes like Broadway, both plays and musicals, their existence, because it's
like
filmed
I kind of would love to see more musicals like further down the line in terms of popularity, like come out with filmed versions. Like apparently Josh Gad, who was in the original Broadway cast of Book of Mormon, has come out and said there is a filmed version. I just don't know where it is.
Yeah, but I think I'm gonna guess that's more in the classical where they just like filmed it. So if you haven't,
I think like Library of Congress, like film performances, like research purposes. But Lincoln Center, excuse me.
Yeah, for this, they like filmed it specifically to put it out like this. So it's like 3 or 4 different shows where like they would shoot a specific thing in a show, like a specific angle. So like all the wide stuff is from one show. They would shoot close-ups and then they cut it all together. So it's very cinematic, and it's done so well. Like if it's like it's almost better than being there because like it's like the having the perfect seat at all times and also being able to see close-ups on
nothing beats it live, but is the closest you will ever get right now, considering Broadway's closed until next year.
Oh, and also if you don't live anywhere, like I happen to live near somewhere where there is like a big stage venue. and I was supposed to see Hamilton in 2 weeks there, but like I have because I live in like the nation's capital. Like if you don't live in like a major city, like you would never have an opportunity to really see any of these, especially if it's one with a like the specific cast. Like this being the original cast was
everyone went on the do.
And I think like this could also just kind of like be a way to like save like certain musicals. Because I know like Beetlejuice was like becoming like super kind of a hot ticket, but because of like COVID and like the theater they were running it out of, like basically it's like their contract with the theater like ran out, and if it was doing well enough, it would have like they would have been able to continue it. And I think it's like if like if they were to able to kind of film like that Beetlejuice show and then put it up on somewhere, like that could like totally like gain the interest to do like a road show, just, for people to see it live. Like same with
like a Fathom event sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, this is like
I think the SpongeBob musical got filmed and they put it on Nickelodeon like on Thanksgiving because I remember wanting to watch it, and then I think it's on Amazon Prime right now.
Yeah, I heard that musical's not bad.
Neither have I. And yeah.
Well, I think like it's doing this, which has kind of like you said has been done before. But it's like I think the way they did it, and like Siler, and I couldn't hear you, Alan. Did you see it yet or no?
No.
Like I said, the way they film it, it's so like I've seen like Cats, the original one, like on a VHS 30 years ago. Like
yeah, man, we all saw
different.
that.
Yeah. But like it's filmed so well
like
and so
filmed like a movie. Like there's actual like shots.
Yeah.
They do things with
Yeah,
it.
I know.
Yeah, and it's like 4K. Like I'm watching it, like having that ability, which is one of the funny things because like I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy that plays one of the characters like spits while he's singing, and that became a thing, which I did not know.
Jonathan Groff, King George.
Yeah. So it's also I was like, holy shit, that's the guy from Mindhunter. And I didn't know that he did this. And then I was like, oh, wait, he was also in Glee. Oh, wait, he's also the voice of the one character in Frozen. I was like, I would never have pictured this guy, which makes me think he's a fucking amazing actor.
His big thing was he was in the show Spring Awakening, which is a pretty big musical.
So, yeah, and I know they're doing another...
Also,
they're making a...
out the taste of Artemis Fowl.
Oh, yes, it did.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, like, it... they are doing another Lin-Manuel play as a movie, but it's actually going to just be a movie.
Yeah, In the Heights is an actual like adaptation of the of the play, which I have not seen a musical, and I'm kind of excited because I've heard very good things.
Yeah, and then I posted in here, which is
from they have a lot of people from like Hamilton coming over, like the guy who played his son in the show is playing the main character.
He's good. And like, yeah, and I saw like they were going to do to kind of connect this back. I guess this artist, Brett Schonover, was posting it, like panels and pages that he made for when they were trying to work out to do a graphic novel of the play, which fell through. And it's a really cool look because they could not get the rights for the actors.
Okay.
And which is one of the problems they said like they went through, which is why if you look at like, oh, Hamilton looks nothing like Lin-Manuel Miranda. But yeah, also the songs in that era are fucking amazing.
Yes. Oh, I was literally like just humming them before I came onto this today. I'm like, oh my god, I am obsessed.
Yeah, and then there's like a side cover album that you showed me, John, with like the Weird Al polka version.
So what they did is that they made a Hamilton, the first thing was the first volume was a Hamilton mixtape, which had like The Roots, Nas, Ja Rule featuring Ashanti, Jimmy Fallon, and then they had a bunch of like digital only releases that had a bunch of other artists like the Weird Al thing, or they had like a punk rock cover of Helpless, which was kind of great, like almost Joan Jett style, but it wasn't Joan Jett.
Yeah, I went into like a weird hole. I was like, oh. And the last thing I'll say is like, I was like, oh, like looking at the one song The King sings, because that's my favorite song. And he came up with the idea, he was guest starring on House and talking to Hugh Laurie about writing this thing that was a love letter breakup kind of musical between the King of England and the colonies. and Hugh Laurie like riffed in his regular voice, like, "You'll be back." And he's like, "I'm gonna file that away for later," and that's kind of the birth of that song. So I was like, "Holy shit, that's hilarious!"
That's amazing.
So to go back to some of the other stuff, so Siler, you posted, so there's this Harley Quinn digital only, which is what, like half of the books now DC's putting out.
Yeah, and this book looks like kind of really rad. So it'll be running for 14 weeks with a new chapter going up every Friday. And the first chapter that came out today was done by writer-artist Steven Sejic, who like did Harleen for Black Label and like also did those really sweet like DC women like webcomics for a while. Like he has like a really rad Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy story. So it's just like, it's like really cool that, to see him like, still being able to work with those characters within the confines of like, DC. But the list of creators for this basically is going to be called Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red. Will include Paul Dini, Amanda Connor, Jimmy Padamati, Chad Harden, Saladin Ahmad, Javier Rodriguez, Team Steely, Juan Ferreira, Erica Henderson, Daniel Kibblesmith, like Marika Andolfo, Joe Quinones, like Riley Rosebo. So it's just like, I was just like reading this list of people. I'm just like, this is just like a murder's row of great artists and like writers, like being able to have fun with this character. Just like, I'm excited to like kind of like see this all put out, and hopefully it gets like a physical release, sooner or later.
This first page looks gorgeous, and like I like, because sometimes black and white can be like annoying because they're just doing it to do it. But I actually like the use of it, and like having her thought boxes in red.
This is Steven Sejic.
Yeah, and then seeing her like voice boxes, like, the white to me is like her doing her Harleen Quinzel voice, and the gray is her as Harley Quinn, or maybe it's the reverse. Like I'll have to look at it, but it's like, it's fun. It reminds me I have to watch season 2 of Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn. Yeah, and I guess Harley Quinn's getting season 3, hopefully.
Well, season 1 and 2 are going to HBO Max, but there's no word if season 3 is going there as well.
Yeah. By the way, we're going to talk about the DC league.
That got disproven. So.
Oh, you don't say.
By James Gunn. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like it. The people behind the curtain, there was like a leak that was going around. That was just like, man, like this looks like a lot of the stuff to announce. And like the one thing that was like the tip off, at least for me, it was like first look at James Gunn's Suicide Squad, and I'm like, man, like, I don't know that shit.
It was like that, and then it was like, and Keanu Reeves has come back as Constantine. I was like, yeah, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, well, it was like,
I was like, wild, though. I'm not gonna lie.
And they're like, and they're going to announce 2 DC games. And I'm like, I was like, they might announce the one, not both of them. Even if there is like a second one, it's like, I feel like it's. Yeah, it just basically just like looked like a bunch of bullshit with like some like half truths.
Yeah, and to go with like the Harley Quinn show stuff, like there's even basically more and more like, they're just slowly phasing out DC Universe, but like that's going to HBO Max. Stargirl, which I have really, really dug season 1, is officially getting a season 2 and moving to the CW.
Was it not on CW before?
No, it was like DC Universe episodes were Monday, then the next day tomorrow will be
CW.
Alright, like I tried watching Stargirl the other day. I was over at like my mom's house, and they didn't have the first 2 episodes up. They had like episodes 3 through 7 up, and I was like, I'm like, I guess I'm not watching it tonight.
Yeah, I do want to like, it'll be sad if the production budget is like significantly cut, because it's one of the appealing things of it, where it looks really good, because there's a fucking giant robot in it that doesn't look like dog shit, and looks kind of real and lived in, and like the suits look better in live action than they do in still images. And like I think I told you in like the chat, like I think it's the show that we wanted Runaways to be, where it's like, it's very much about the kids. the kids like, and then the villains are adults, and you're getting stuff from the villains, but it's not about them. You're just kind of getting like, oh, this is who they are, some of their backstory. Oh, and now they're being evil. Like all the character-driven stuff is the kids.
And like the thing is that it very much reminds me of a like 80s Spielbergian movie that happens to be about superheroes.
Oh, I can get that. Yeah, because it's kind of ET-ish in many ways, and they do have great acting, and they have pulled in characters that I was like, I'm surprised that they're talking about these characters like at all.
Like I thought I saw someone dressed up like Dr. Midnight.
Oh, Dr. Midnight is in it. We see two different people in that costume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see two Dr. Midnights, 2 Hour Men's, Starman and Stargirl.
Yeah, they're basically just doing JSA.
Yeah,
they
the whole
got
thing
you.
is her building a new JSA.
Does Our Man still do like the pill?
No, it's an hourglass on his chest.
Okay, that honestly makes more sense than like a guy who takes a pill to make himself powerful for an hour.
You mean steroids?
Yeah, nuke.
Yeah, and like Luke Wilson, I think is like perfectly cast as being this like this is what he should have always been doing. Like when he hit like that age, where he's like a good Nebuchadnezzar mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like this super reluctant person, and the stories feel real with the characters. Like it's a little like extra. Like each character has like a little bit of like extra background while they're like broken-y, I guess you could say, but they're not really like why they would choose to do this. But they feel like modern and lived in. Like it doesn't feel like, because my wife watches a bunch of those like Disney Family, or I don't even know what's called anymore, shows. Those teen dramas, and it's like not as horrible as that, like where Cloak and Dagger were, and it's not as extra as that. And the what the villains are doing feels more real world of like why they would do them. But yeah, the DC Universe app is like, I feel like we've been saying it for a year. They're like slowly phasing it out.
Yeah.
Which is probably like better for some of these shows. Like I think having a show like Doom Patrol on HBO Max, is it right?
Yeah.
Like I think like that might honestly like help that show a lot, because
it's probably
I saw like a new preview for that show, and I'm just like I really want to watch it. But it kind of just reminds me of everything I kind of wanted Umbrella Academy to be. Like it's weird in the way that I don't think Umbrella Academy like felt the need to do, and you know, it still has like room to kind of do like a lot of the family stuff and the sad stuff, while like also like, hey, like here's also a scene where Flex Mentallo gives everyone orgasms.
I feel like the weirdness in the trailers is played up much more, because they're watching season 1 and season 2 has started. I'm waiting. I want to wait till it ends so I can just watch it all.
Oh, I saw the one trailer I saw was like the DC cut of like Doom Patrol, where it had like this really sad song, and it looked like, and it focused on all the members, you know, in like a really like melancholy way, and it like it had like really no jokey stuff.
Yeah, because I think that show,
you know, which is funny because like leading up to it, like all I saw were like all the jokey bits and Danny the Street,
and Brendan Fraser masterfully saying "fuck."
Yeah, there is a ton of fun in that show, but like that show does so much like character development that it's awesome. Like that's the character development stuff in that show makes you care so much about these characters and want them to stop like being fucktards. And like the way that they deal with things, like I feel like Negative Man's story is like, to me, like in many ways, like such a well done story in the first season. Because I don't know if it is in the comics, but having him be like this like post World War II fighter pilot who's in the closet and having to like move his family around because he's hanging out with the boys too much, and people start talking, and like his entire arc is dealing with like him like not coming out to himself in many ways, is like a really interesting take on like that kind of a story. I don't know, like they do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Like even with is it Elastigirl?
Yeah.
yeah, like her stuff is really cool too, with like seeing like dealing with the idea of like this Hollywood actress that's like in her vanity, and like that's the opposite of what her power is. It's like it's all played really well. Then it's also like with all this stuff going on, it's like, oh, this is kind of the best cyborg we have gotten and the most human. It's also the one that we get to spend the most time with, live action wise.
Yeah, I think it's also like a little funny because Beast Boy was part of the Doom Patrol, and like instead of having him in it, they get the Cyborg, the other Teen Titan, in the show.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like he looks good in that show. Like,
Well,
it's
they do
fun
a good
because
job of
I think all the costumes kind of look bad, but I think it's like
on
it's
purpose.
it's like to the strength of the show. Like Robot
Yeah.
Man looks very cheap, but like
He
God,
should.
like he looks cool. Like
I honestly say, like, I think it's Brendan Fraser's best thing he's ever done. He's more emotive in
The
doing
Mummy.
a voice. No, but I mean, like, emotionally, like, when he gets to play, like, heavy scenes of just doing voiceover, he's fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, like, going back to our conversations earlier, like, he was a guy who, was blacklisted for, like, years because, he, spoke out about, like, sexual assault that happened to him within the industry. And,
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, he was sexually assaulted.
yeah, like,
Oh.
like that's kind of like why you didn't see him in like films for a long time. Like there was like like another thing that came out from like an interview with Elijah Wood, where Elijah Wood spoke about it a couple of years ago, and it's like he does like a lot of cool indie vanity projects now, but you don't see Elijah Wood and like
No, that's why I guess he did like
stuff.
Wilford and a bunch of goofy stuff on that. I'm trying to think. Was it like the Terry Crews stuff? Was it similar to that?
Mm-hmm. But it's like even like Terry Crews still gets like shit for it because it's like because
he gets a little bit of help because he's like, compared to the other two guys, he's like a I don't know, 6'2", like 300-pound brick shithouse like black guy who's in action movies. So like I think he kind of has like he kind of has a little bit of defense of the type of movies he's in because he's never a leading man, which Fraser was and Elijah Wood was.
I think it's also
I would argue that just because Elijah Wood was Lord of the Rings, he didn't really get many leading man roles even after.
No, I guess you're right. He kind of got. It's actually interesting to think about now. I feel like he got the career that Daniel Radcliffe wants to have and is not getting.
That's actually like
It's not
like same with like Robert Pattinson. Like I feel like that's kind of like the career that Daniel Radcliffe kind of wants. Yeah,
Pattinson's like even more artsy.
Like I don't think like Daniel Radcliffe wants to do Batman, but like the idea that Radcliffe like goes and does like these really kind of neat like weird indie movies, and Daniel Radcliffe, I'll be in Guns Akimbo. I'll have like guns like stowed in my hands.
Didn't he also do like a goofy one or two goofy TV shows?
He did Miracle Workers.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. I was like, and then you have what's his name did Wilford, and he's done like a bunch of other. Did he do something where it's like a detective show? Elijah Wood. That was
that was Dirk Gently, and that was from Max Landis, everyone's favorite.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about him anymore.
But yeah, also I want to
Elijah Wood runs the production studio who made Mandy and Color Out of Space.
God, and Mandy is so good.
Yeah, it's Elijah Wood studio, Spectre Vision.
Yeah, but I feel like he wants to be more of like I don't even know what you would call Elijah Wood's not a leading man, but he's a
character actor.
He's but top tier character actor.
Who happened to fall into a leading role when he was in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I forgot he was also Wirt in Over the Garden Wall, and he's like great in that.
And he was also a child. Like he's been working since he was 7. Elijah Wood?
he was in North.
Yeah, he was in North.
Weird story, because that is exactly the movie I was thinking of. My neighbor growing up is in North with him.
That's funny.
If you've ever seen that movie, which is the weirdest movie ever, with him, Bruce Willis, Dan Aykroyd has a part where
also low key kind of racist.
Yes, absolutely.
The whole Hawaii part.
The part, Kathy Bates.
I also remember review by
Roger Ebert.
Roger Ebert was like brutal, like scathingly brutal.
Yeah, if you ever see that movie again, the kid that's like the bad kid that was his friend was my neighbor who I was friends with growing up.
He was in The Faculty. That movie's rad. Oh man,
Oh,
yeah.
I love The Faculty because that's also like horror brat pack of the 90s.
I just love that after Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood went from Eternal Sunshine, Sin City, Happy Feet, 9, the Maniac.
Nine was
the
a whiff,
Maniac,
but all those other ones were
Man,
good.
I'm
Maniac
so
remake,
sad.
and then don't forget The Last Witch Hunter.
Oh,
Man, I'm really kind of like to this day. I'm sad that 9 is not good. I was like so excited for that movie.
oh, it has such a cool style and like, because is 9 what's his name? Is that Tim Burton?
No, it was
No, it's just very Tim Burton-esque.
it
No,
was
it's not.
it was produced by Tim Burton, but like the big thing about it was like Timur Babankov also produced it, and like that was like around time like he was kind of getting big, and then he kind of like fizzled out because he was like the Night Watch guy.
He was
Holy
Night
shit,
Watch.
this cast is insane.
He was Wanted. He was John C. Reilly, Jennifer
Oh
Connelly.
God, Wanted.
John C. Reilly, Crispin
Hey,
Glover,
It's
Martin
not the
Landau.
comic, but I like that movie.
I love Wanted is the perfect. Oh well, cable
Well-
doesn't exist in my house anymore. It's the perfect. Oh, I'm flipping through. Oh, I'm on FX and Wanted's on. I'll watch this.
I mean, the Wanted movie is way better than the Wanted comic. I'll tell you that.
Oh, because that's the comic. Is what's his name, right? That's
Mark
Yeah,
Millar.
it's
Everyone's
Halle
favorite.
Berry and Eminem like being assassins, and then there's like a character who's made of shit, and then there's like
apparently he might make a sequel to Wanted using that computer screen film genre he made, like Unfriended and Searching.
what?
which sucks because the guy who made that movie, because he's Russian. His 2 Russian horror movies are fantastic. I love them, and he made Wanted instead of making the 3rd one.
And then we
Which
got
was
Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, and Ben-Hur. So
I forgot that there was like a Ben-Hur remake.
Yeah, there was like a push for like a while for like let's do
Sword and Sandal movies.
sword and sandal movies. Like let's have Ben-Hur and Pompeii, and I was just like,
I feel like
Like,
those
it's
came
like,
out
what do
like way too after 300, but like were 300 ripoffs.
yeah, well, like they came around the
Henry
time where
Cavill.
the actual 300 sequel came out.
Yeah, wasn't Henry Cavill in one of those?
Immortals.
I think I've seen a couple minutes of that, and I was like, no, I'm good.
Did
Yeah,
anyone
And I feel like
forget?
300 sequel is almost a porn. Like it's a
I like the 300 sequel. I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's like a bad take, but like I thought that movie was fun.
they're fine. It's like I feel like those the 300 movies are like they're 2 of the time, and I feel like they'll probably age horrendously.
Like, what's her name's in that movie? She's like a total babe.
Eva
Eva Green.
Green,
Oh, man.
yes.
She's so cool in that movie.
Yeah, because she's naked in the entire movie, basically.
Yes, and she's like the best part about Sin City: A Dame to Kill For.
Yeah,
she's like
she's
the
in
only
both
good
of those
thing about that movie.
Robert Rodriguez movies. All right, we're getting like to get back on topic, which is kind of
I think Alan was also saying something.
Yeah. Did everyone forget that Legends, the past season, and Wanted had similar plot, i.e., Loom of Fate?
Loom of Fate.
The Loom of Fate.
I haven't even finished Legends season 5 yet, but
yeah. I have not finished the new season, but yeah, the Loom of Fate. Well, and it's still better than the comic. But I think it's actually a good way to spin back onto a topic because James McAvoy is in Wanted, and James McAvoy is the voice of Morpheus in the Audible Sandman, and they dropped the trailer, which we're supposed to be getting for the 18th time someone's trying to do a Sandman project for now. It's for Netflix.
so I'm actually reading that right now because Neil did drop some information on his Facebook today about it.
The show or the audiobook?
The show. Like, it was in passing, but I'm getting his Facebook up right now.
I imagine he has a lot of free time now.
Yeah.
Because, like, hey, it's been long enough. We haven't really talked about Neil Gaiman getting a divorce. from Dresden Doll singer
Amanda Palmer.
Amanda
That
Palmer.
was a while ago. I
Man,
love
2020 has been it's felt like a flash, man. I feel like
Yeah.
everything has happened a week ago.
yeah, because
All right,
like
so here's what they're doing. So they said on the 15th of July, Audible released the first of the Sandman audio adaptations. These are full cast audiobooks of the first 3 Sandman graphic novels. And then these are very straightforward adaptations. For the upcoming Netflix TV series, we're starting from now, and we're doing it as if it was being written for the first time in 2020.
oh
I wonder if they
And then
have
if
like all
you-
the DC parts in that.
If you want to be old school about it, if you don't have Audible, they are going to have it for sale as CDs.
oh, I just got a new car and I don't know if it even has a CD player in it.
Oof.
But I will be downloading this audiobook, which I know we've talked about.
Can I get it on
been,
vinyl?
I'm sure they actually will put it out on vinyl. It would be cool to like. I would like them to do like to match it with the comic and put it out that way. Would be interesting, like a motion comic or something. But the cast is absolutely insane with this because it's
Taron Egerton as John Constantine. What a good casting choice.
yeah.
Kat Dennings' death is like so good.
Yeah, and Riz Ahmed, Michael Sheen, Andy Serkis. Like, there's some like crazy fucking names. So I think the other thing here we had was basically if you've never heard of Humble Bundle, they do awesome bundles all the time where like you buy something and part of it goes to proceeds for a charity. Every once in a while they do really good comic ones. I know I bought shit. What was that did a Descender and Ascender? Oh my god!
Yeah, like IDW does this a lot. Dynamite does them a lot. Image does them every once in a while. And this is like a big Image one, and it's like a great one. For if just for $1, like if that's all you want to spend on this, you get We Stand on Guard, They're Not Like Us, Invincible volumes 1 through 4. The Ghost Fleet, Farmhand, Curse Words, Copra, Buzzkill, Blackbird, and volumes 1 and 2 of Redlands, and that's just like for $1.
Yeah, if you go top tier and then spend the $18, you get basically everything from Invincible, everything from Hack and Slash, everything from Stray Bullets. Trying to remember everything
Like
from Snot Girl.
I think like almost everything except for the last arc of Sex Criminals. All of Hack Slash.
Yeah, it's like huge name comic books.
Yeah, like all the Battle Chasers, like that's like 12 issues, but like holy shit, like Joe Madureira Battle Chasers is so good. Like Snot Girl volumes 1 and 2, like the first 3 volumes of Unnatural by Marika Andolfo, like all of Black Silent, or the first 5 volumes of Black Science. Like
Yeah,
this is like
the one and this is a great service. I bought the Jeff Lemire one. I think they did last year. It basically came with like every single thing he ever did that he had the like kind of creator owned, and some stuff that he was like did for the big 2, I think. And it's all digital if you don't know.
It's all digital. And
they basically send you like it's not it's like the computer comic form. It's CBR files. And they just send them to you in an email, and you download them. Do whatever way you want to read them.
Yeah, and I think there's like definitely some like really cool stuff here that you don't really hear too many people talk about anymore. Like I don't think I've read like the last volume of They're Not Like Us, but I thought that was like a really fun Image, kind of fun take on like X-Men. Plutona from Jeff Lemire and Lennox, I thought was like really great, and you kind of just don't really hear people talk about that anymore. Copra, like you get the first 5 volumes of Copra, and it's like if you love like 80s Suicide Squad, you'll love Copra.
And I would say looking this bundle
like Revival was like kind of like a rad comic that was like kind of a hot book for a while, and then it ended, but like Revival is kind of a neat book.
I was to say the 2 charities this supports are the Book Industry Charitable Foundation and the Hero Initiative, which are kind of good for right now because the Hero Initiative helps support comic book artists and creators to like stay on their feet, which is kind of good right now. And the book industry charitable foundation is to like help out keep book people in their homes and their jobs and families. Stabilize like brick and mortar stores, which are like my comic book store hasn't reopened, and I haven't heard anything about what they're doing in like a month. So
like also like not to hammer on like the first story of the show, but like the Heroes Initiative has become like a really kind of like good alternative to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, since the guy, like one of the main people in charge of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund had been like an abuser, like a known abuser for years, who has finally been like kind of ousted within the company, and not the best way that the organization could have handled it. But a lot of people have brought up, like, if you do not want to give money to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, but you want to still like help like comic writers and other ways, the Heroes Initiative is like a really good alternative.
All right, so now that we have covered all that, is there any other news stories we wanted to talk about or anything, or do we want to jump into our comic?
I'm kind of ready to jump into the comic.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything else.
All right, so kind of what we to like spin off of some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. So we read John Constantine's Hellblazer. We were reading issues, was it 41 to 46?
Yes. I actually read the wrong issue, so I didn't finish, so I might be listening more than talking.
Yeah. But you probably have some backstory that could give us to this first issue at least. So this is basically the comic, the 5 or 6 issues that they take heavy inspiration from for our next movie for Party Watch, which will be the Keanu Constantine Party Watch, movie watch party. I don't remember what it's called. And so basically we open up on issue 41, and it's this entire issue is just like, which to me, I now read Constantine in Matt Ryan's voice forever. It'll be hard to think of the character with not Matt Ryan.
Also, this is the Garth Ennis era of Hellblazer.
This is the first comic. 41 is the first one he takes over, I believe.
Yeah, with Will Simpson, the not most well known Simpson, but a very good Simpson.
Yes, and it is called was it Bad Habits?
Dangerous Habits.
Dangerous Habits. If you want to look for it. So we basically open up with like Constantine saying he's dying, kind of going through a little bit of backstory that's been going on, which is what you read, John. Smoking his cigarette, and this early art is also pretty good. I like the use of like the way black and shadow is. Basically, it's him basically talking about, which we'll see in the movie, like he's smoking, and then we see him and he's sitting in like, it's not I don't know what you would call it because it's in England. It's not a diner. Yeah, something like that, and smoking. Which a lot of this I was like, oh shit, this is so old. You could smoke inside anywhere.
Yeah, not to spoil something that happens later, but he like is smoking in a cancer ward, and he gives a cigarette to a dying cancer patient. I'm like, couldn't do that in 2020.
Also, kind of like, I think it's early on here, the British colloquialism for a cigarette is used a lot. In this comic.
Yeah.
I have a good joke about that once we get to the one point about that.
Yeah, so he kind of flashes back into his bed, and he's like, oh man, and I do like how they play the cursing in it, where he's like, what the and he just like has his hand is covered in blood, and he runs to the bathroom and he's spitting up blood, and he pukes, and he's like, there is some bad art in this book, but some of it is also like, I like the way they show like the horrific look on his face of like, he's like, that was not like blood or snot, like it wasn't even liquid, like he hacked out a piece of his lung, and like cutting back and forth, and this is where we get some stuff where he's like,
well, and then there's like also a point where like he's like reflecting back at the diner, and he's basically monologuing, and he's like on this path I walk alone, and I just had like the Batista theme in my brain. It was like dunna dunna, and him just like John Constantine just walking down the street like I walk alone.
I also think of like, and this may be like the Godsmack song.
Yeah.
Walk alone.
Stand alone.
But this is like when we get back to the diner is when we get like, oh, is it the demon blood? Which I don't remember the story, but it's been a thing in Constantine that some way he won in some sort of a bet with a demon and his blood was replaced with or mixed with demon blood, which is why he's such a powerful magician or mage or whatever term you want to use.
I mean, like a lot of like the stuff that he does, like within this, at least within these chapters, is all like trickery and sleight of hand and bluffing.
Yeah, he does that, but he does some like mesmerism, and then he does do like a big ritual at the end. And then he talks about his twin, which is a story I've never heard of, which I guess is what you read.
Yeah, so there's this whole thing where he's been traveling with this girl Mercury and her mother, and they picked up people along the way. That story was hard for me to get through just because I wasn't as invested as I was when I started reading the other one we were supposed to read. But he had crawled into this cave, and he kept seeing this golden child. It's like, oh, I thought it was an imaginary friend, and it turns out it's his twin brother who he, I guess, ate in the womb.
Which I feel like is a trope that I've seen in like 12 different cartoons. And
an old Charles Xavier did he?
Oh, I was going to say Charles Xavier, the Venture Bros. It was with him and his brother. And then didn't they do a Simpsons one of this too with Bart? Like a Treehouse of Horror episode?
I feel like there might have been a Simpsons thing at some point.
Yeah. So then we pop from all this. This is basically like their one page of like giving us some backstory. And he's like, no, it couldn't be all this. Like, this is like too weird. It's like the thing that's sitting in my face, which we think, like, I like the panel. It's like, oh, it's his fingers on a pack of cigarettes. And I do think that like the next couple pages of him talking to the doctor are so grossly kind of real and like visceral. I was like, oh shit, like this is like really well written.
Mm-hmm.
Of like his diagnosis and the doctor being so uncomfortable with it. And it's like, ooh. And
this is like also like at the time where we get like our first instance of of the colloquialism for a pack of cigarettes in Britain.
Yes. I think
it's like
it was jarring.
Okay, so like the 2 points I just want to make about this. It's like the first time he asked me like how many I went through a day. I was just like, hey man, like being gay doesn't give you cancer.
God damn it.
The second point, it like also just reminded me of the bit from Clerks the animated series where they were like, hey, remember the time we worked at a British clerk store? And the guy's like, hey, can I have a pack of like whatever? And he's like, and Randall's like, I'm not. He's like, I'm not your blank mate. He's like, it's a word for a cigarette. He's like, you're a cigarette.
I do have the right, like, so this is like early 1991 going into like late 1991.
I wonder if that's a colloquialism that's still used today.
I would guess not.
Yeah, I'm gonna confirm, having been in England, no, they do not.
You like, did you ask like, hey man, can I have a pack of blanks? And you're like, hey man, that's not cool anymore.
No, I just heard them call them cigarettes, and I'm like, okay, cool. So we're not using the worst term. Got it.
You're like, yeah. Oh, we've learned something.
Yep. And so then
someone who watches this show corrects me, and I'm like, cool, I'm wrong, I guess, even though I did go to England. But okay.
Wait.
No, I'm saying. Did you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Like someone, like one of our British, like a British listener.
I don't know if we have. I don't know.
Yeah.
If we have a British listener that corrects me, and it's like, I mean, yes, you're probably right. I'm not going to doubt that, considering you live there. I just studied there.
I'm sure there are people that still use it, but I'm guessing it's not used like casually and frequently like it is in this book. And then I really like this next part of like,
Also, I think it's like also like kind of fair for me to like also bring up like the gay joke I made maybe about 2 minutes ago, that John Constantine is a bi character, like is a joke. about him and his
Oh.
character. Not maybe specifically at
I would
this
say
point.
he's like passed by, like, because in what was it, is it the Justice League Apocalypse movie? He
Oh
hooks
yeah,
up
where he
King
hooks up
Shark.
with King Shark. Yes.
Or it's not even implied. He's like, oh, my ex, like, you hooked up with her. Or his Raven's like, oh, you dated Harley Quinn's like, oh no, gross. And
It's like, what do you think? I'm
it's just that
crazy?
like beat. It's just that beat, and then King Shark winks at him.
God, I want like someone to write a comic about Constantine and King Shark on date night. I want to read that comic so bad.
Yeah. Which is something again, like
Shark on date night. That sounds.
And you guys know me, like I'm like I watch all this animated shit. I'm not super like really interested in like the DC animated stuff for like a very long time, like for like kind of like various reasons. But like I saw that clip online, and I did like a message in our group, and I was just like, "Hey guys, like, do they do more of this? Like, because I'll watch the show if they like did a whole bit with this."
oh well, there's like 4 bits with King Shark in that movie, and I think it is one of the better animated movies, and is a great roundabout, which Matt Ryan does the voice, which is also awesome. And to pop back into the comic, which I think is like, so the next part's like his dream.
Going back from shark fucking to cancer.
When he has his dream about Astra, so the canceled Constantine show that Matt Ryan was in, a lot of it's centered around this event, which I believe is mentioned in Legends, with the Newcastle thing in Astra, and she's kind of now, because the season got cut short, so she's like kind of the villain-ish, where basically, depending, and I think in the animated CW thing, because the Constantine show and the Constantine in Legends are different Constantines, they're like separate universes, but similar things happened.
Am I also misremembering that this is also a plot point in the Constantine movie?
Yes. It might be. It's always been a back part of him. Yeah. Where like basically, I think in it, something happens for reasons. There's a girl who's haunted by a demon. In the CW universe, she's like possessed. In the NBC show, it's like when they were young and punks, and they try to summon a demon, and his way to beat it is to summon a more powerful demon, and he fucks up, and it takes this child to hell. But I do also love this like dream sequence, the way it's drawn, the color use of it, all in black, and all the characters are in this like newspaper like yellowish tone. It's like not quite white. And then like the way he wakes up and he's just like I love that it's just like holy Jesus Christ, like and just like everything's so messed up, and then him puking in the toilet all night, and then we cut back to the diner, and then it cuts to the hospital, or no, it cuts to his friend, and he's like, oh, I want to go look through the hospital, which is where we get to meet Matt, is a goddamn great character.
Yeah.
Also, like, by the way, like him just like puking in the toilet and then the toilet overflowing with puke is like maybe like one of the grossest like panels I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, but like I think all that stuff is like all the things of him being sick is so visceral and well done.
Yeah,
and I do think all this stuff in like when he's in this cancer ward is also well, and this is where he gives the cigarettes to the old guy, and they basically hang out and have a chat because he tells the doctor like, oh, his aunt is dying, and it's like, oh, it's his buddy. So he's like, yeah, and then he's like, oh, and he's like kind of goes to go tell the old guy that, and he's like, why the fuck am I telling this guy that? He's like, yeah, I might move here in a week or two, I don't know. And it's just really good, and it's a really interesting character to have in like a comic book, but specifically in this comic book, to have like this confidant that he kind of creates. It's like the only character he's honest to, which is something that is never in Constantine's lexicon, is honesty. And then we get like this goofy stuff where the doctor's like, oh, your blood looks weird, and he's like, oh, fuck that guy, and he goes like on a thing, and this is how he got in the diner, and he shits on the guy that's owning it until he gets thrown out.
Wasn't there also like a bit where the doctor's name was like Dr. Ellis, which like I'm like I would 80% bet that that's like a Warren Ellis reference, since
his name is Doctor. I'm gonna guess because they're contemporaries.
Well, and then like about 10 years like after this comic comes out.
Oh,
or
it's his name.
Like about 8 years after this comic comes out, Warren Ellis does like 2-year run on Hellblazer.
Yeah, which I think we should say, like, I think Garth Ennis, who wrote this book, is like basically coming off of Preacher when he comes over to do this. Is that correct?
You know what? That's how I recognize the name.
Because Garth Ennis was doing like this book came out in 1991. I'm
gonna look at his thing right now.
His like bibliography.
Yeah,
they kind of make reference in one of the stories to Preacher.
Preacher was 95, 96.
They make what was the character in Preacher? Was it Pimple Face or was it
Arseface?
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, I thought a different thing then.
Yeah, so I'm looking. He had been doing before this. It looks like Judge Dredd, maybe
2000 AD.
What? Yeah, which
2000 AD.
Which I feel like all those big UK writers like at least like did some kind of work on 2000 AD at some point.
Yeah, he was working. He did all his stuff at like Fleetway, which is like the UK one.
But yeah, like he did like Hellblazer, and then he went on to do The Demon for DC, Hitman for DC, and then he started doing Preacher in '95. But I think like I think Hitman like also like ran for like quite a while, like maybe like while he was also doing Preacher at Vertigo.
Yeah, Hitman, which I've read, is fantastic.
Yeah, I've like an old customer, like he would kind of like talk to me, and he swore like up and down like the best work that Garth Ennis ever did was his work on Hitman. And
he won an Eisner for the one story in Hitman.
Yeah, he said that there was like a really good Superman story in Hitman.
Yes, that's the one that he won the Eisner for, and it is a fucking fantastic story where it's just basically like the two of them talking on a roof. And it's basically the idea of like Superman just like kind of opening up to a stranger about like I can do a lot of things, but I literally can't save everyone. And like dealing with an event that like he couldn't save all, like he had a choice between helping one, like letting one guy die and saving all the other people. And like,
yeah, wait. Garth Ennis wrote a Dastardly and Muttley miniseries.
Yeah. It was a one shot.
That's
because he wrote the he wrote the Wacky Races, like that was also a Mad Max like allegory or like a pastiche.
That's hilarious.
And not to get like super off topic, but it's like kind of like funny. Like Garth Ennis is like a guy who like his bread and butter is like kind of like dark satirical takes on story. On, like,
I think we haven't even talked about the one comic that he's might be currently most famous for, which is The Boys.
Yeah, The Boys. It's like when I was getting into comics, like he was currently writing he was writing Punisher at the time. And then he did the Pro with Image Comics, which was like the comic I found out about Amanda Conner through. And it's like he like does like these really kind of like nihilistic takes on like standard superhero stuff, but like goddamn, like man, that guy has like kind of like a really kind of firm respect for the character of Superman. And it's just like very odd. Like of all the because it's like I feel like Frank Miller is also of like the same cloth. And it's like you ever see him like write Superman, it just feels like he hates this character and he hates like kind of like everything that Superman kind of like stands for as a character. But Garth Ennis is like he's like the Frank Miller who respects Superman.
So I finally found a place that has the timeline. So like he does like all of his stuff with like 2000 AD. In the middle of it, he does this story. So he writes 41 to 50, 52 to 83 in a special for Hellblazer. Then he goes back to doing all his like British comic stuff, and it's not until 95 when he writes Preacher.
Mm-hmm. And basically his work off of Preacher gets him a job doing Punisher.
Yeah, he does off of like the same year as Preacher. He has Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. The next year he has a Batman story. He begins Hitman, which he's writing a shit ton of stuff. If like they're all kind of happening simultaneously. He writes stuff for a bunch of stuff for Image, like where it's like he has a Switchblade book, The Darkness, which is Mad Cow, and then he does another Batman story. Trying to see when his next and basically at that point, like once like the late 90s kind of hit, like he's like is one of the big dogs kind of, I guess, where he just gets whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like Joe Quesada basically he becomes the new editor in chief, and he's like, I'm going to bring in like the biggest creators of like the last 10 years to basically kind of reinvent Marvel. And it's like Grant Morrison, you're going to do X-Men. Like, we're going to have Michael Allred and Peter Milligan doing X-Force, and and it basically like Joe Quesada, it's basically like the actions of Joe Quesada in that very early or late 90s, early 2000s of Marvel that basically just reinvents that entire company. Yeah,
because I'm looking like, oh shit, I forgot he wrote like the Punisher Max series, and that's that's in 04.
Because the Punisher series became Punisher Max after a while, because they were just like, we're going to have the Max imprint, and that's going to be like
the
where
adult,
we have like the adult like Marvel
the DC
stuff.
Dark Label, DC Black Label.
Yeah, like, you know what? You're like absolutely right. And I feel like there was a Luke Cage one. There was
a Ghost Rider or Blade? Was it Ghost Rider or Blade or Doctor Strange?
Like Alias was a Max series. Like the reinterpretation of Squadron Supreme.
Because it became its own series. Did it become its
Daredevil
own universe?
Get its own Max series?
I think like those books, I think like for the most part, I think they were like kind of like their own thing until they weren't.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. It's Alias. Everybody we've said. So there was a Blade. That was a short one. There was a Luke Cage. Bunch of Deadpool stuff. Like
I like Wisdom, like the Pete Wisdom miniseries, and I guarantee you that Pete Wisdom series is in continuity.
What's in here? You have there was a Shang-Chi.
The Hood was a 6-issue mini. That's totally in canon. Also, I will stand the Hood any day. Look, I love the Hood.
U.S. War Machine, Supreme Power. This I remember. This is when they did the reboot. And I loved this universe of like the Squadron Supreme, like the ultimate universe take on the Squadron Supreme, and it just like died. And I love these versions of these characters. Like this is when I started to get into comics. This like 04, like when I was a junior, senior in high school.
I think like Irredeemable Ant-Man was a Max series, or at least it felt like it was a Max series.
Well, there is an Ant-Man there. I think Irredeemable Ant-Man was later.
Yeah, I think because like I think there was like a certain point where they definitely did like kind of shutter the Max label.
It seems like it's mostly the Punisher and Deadpool. Like are the two big labels in the Max series. But it's basically all your like darker characters. But to get back into what we did read, because I do think there's like 3 or 4 issues we could kind of rip through, which is so we ripped through the first one. Second one, we have John's on a boat and he's seasick and he slashes a dude's tires who's a dick to him. And then this is a cool kind of side story that I like that gets into being like an important part where he goes to meet his friend, Brendan. What's his last name? Brendan Finn. Yeah. So he goes to Ireland and they're hanging out and they start drinking. And he basically is going to him to see if he has a way to cure cancer. And they're hanging out and Brendan brings him to his like basement and he's like, oh, you shouldn't drink so much. It's going to jack up your liver. And he's like, oh, man, like, you got to look at this. It's like, this is where the real good shit is. Like, I have this whole wine cellar, but I got to show you this. And, like, lifts up a barrel and it has, like, a secret passageway. He's like, yeah, I found this. I was digging all this stuff. And it's, like, a pool of holy water. And he's like, oh, I haven't been doing magic. And then he does, like, a pentagram with candles. And he's like, yeah, check this shit out. And he, like, lights the candles, opens up a box and like dips them into what was the holy water, and out he takes 2 Irish stouts. Yeah, which they're both like, this is the most delicious shit ever.
Yeah, he basically turns holy water into Guinness.
Yeah, he's like, if Jesus can do wine, why can't Irishmen turn it into a stout? And he's like, this is what you're using this for, is to make magic stout. He's like, yo, shit's gonna happen. He's like, who the fuck's gonna come bother me?
Yeah, and man, and not to be like peering behind the veil, but it's like I was reading that, I was like, man, like I could go for a real good stout right now.
Oh, this book. Well, I was like, especially all this book, but specifically this one, I was like, oh, I really want to drink. Like, especially because they're having so much fun and they're drinking, and John like kind of gets up the thing to like ask him, and he's just like, oh, he's like, do you know anything like cure cancer? It's like, you think I know how to cure cancer? He's like, yeah, that's what he's saying. And he just starts laughing, and John gets all pissy, and he's like, oh, dude, John, calm down. You don't get it. And he's like, what? He's like, I'm actually dying. I'm probably going to die tonight. Like, my liver's jacked up.
Well,
I was going to ask you to help me.
Yeah. And I thought that was like really hilarious. That's like, oh, like, hey, we were going to ask each other.
Yeah, which makes like the next couple of pages awesome, where they're just like basically like, oh, we're both fucked. And they just get shit hammered. And he's just like, yeah, I'm probably going to die tonight. Let's have one last one. And he's like, oh, you can sit down. I'm going to sit down and chill out. Which he sits down because he dies. So John gets up and he goes upstairs, and the door opens, and it's like a tall, slick back haired.
This Dracula looking motherfucker.
Yes. Yeah. Very Dracula looking. And to me, I was like, oh, I was imagining the guy that plays Lucifer on the show. I was like, oh, this is like that version of him, because that's who it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So like that was going to be like one of my questions, because I was wondering if I like missed it, but like this is Lucifer.
Yes, this is Lucifer.
Because I know that like also it's like there's like a Beelzebub. There's a lot of different.
We get into, and he shows up in this book in several different forms. But basically, we get like, this is like Playboy, but in kind of a you know who he looks like, and this is gonna be like, he looks like the bad guy from Yu Yu Hakusho, who's like the rich dude during the tournament.
Not Seto Kaiba. Are you talking about?
Oh, Yu
not Yu Yu Hakusho. Not
Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm sorry. Okay, so like the guy who's like in charge of the team for Tagoro.
Yes. He kind of has that vibe where he's got it's longer, slick back hair, and he's wearing like a suit with a kind of cloak over it, but it's kind of like a frilly shirt. Not a suit. He's dressed like kind of 1800s Victorian, and John's like too drunk to kind of do anything.
I think it's like also like I like to have like this headcanon of demons who like appear before people in the material of like the clothing of the last time they came up to the surface. Like he hasn't been on the surface of like the earth since like 1850s, so he looks like a guy from the 1850s. So he's like,
that's like how I think of when I read Sandman. Like whenever he shows up on Earth, like he's very much that character, which Lucifer is very much in that. But I do like he kind of has like a Seagal style like haircut, where it's like straight back with like a shitty ponytail. And John clocks him who it is right away, but he's too drunk to kind of do anything. And he follows him downstairs, and his buddy's dead. And Lucifer basically tells him, "Oh, he's a simple kind of guy. He sold his soul to have like the best wine in the world. You know, just a simple arrangement. With a bargain for a devil." And he's like, But
the whole thing is like when he dies, like he wanted like the day he died, like have his soul taken by midnight. And it's like if
that's like that's the thing that could break the contract. Otherwise, his soul would go to heaven. And then he's like, he basically says that he's like I was trying to find like the actual phrase, but he's like, there's nothing more pathetic than a drunkard.
No, I have the quote here is like, he basically goes into this huge monologue about like existence and whatever. And he's like, but they don't outsmart me, and I'll tell you why. They're mortal, and to be mortal, to be stupid, proud, conceited, and ultimately pathetic. And there's nothing more pathetic than a drunkard.
Yeah, and basically this pisses Constantine off because it's his buddy, and he's like, "Well, it's 5 to midnight. You have time for drinking."
Not even that. He's like 5 to midnight, mate. Like he's like, hey man, you only got 5 minutes left, and he's like, time enough. Which is like, hey, like this like kind of like, it's like goes back into like turn those words back on him, but like at the idea that Constantine's like kind of a grifter, like
but it goes into like what ends up happening. It's like, oh, like you have time enough for a drink. It's like, let me scoop 2 pint glasses into this random pool of stout that's in the floor, and we
'Cause I
can
mean,
have
like-
a drink.
'cause I
And
mean, if you
Lucifer
just-
doesn't even notice.
Yeah, man, it's like if you showed up to a party and someone like put like a glass into
In
like
the-
a pool of unknown liquid, you drink it, right?
Yeah, so like, yeah, they both drink it, and he's like, oh, awesome. And he's just like, yeah, why not? Like, you're gonna go to hell eventually. And it's like, who gives a shit? Like, Lucifer's like, whatever. And so they drink it, and he's like, oh man, it's like, yeah, he's like, so what does old food do with this magic? He made magic stuff. Like, yeah, as long as the candles stay lit, it doesn't turn back into holy water. Lucifer's like, looks at the guy, he's like, really? And then like looks back and like, what? And it's just a great look of John smiling and kicks over the table. And so then the beer turns into holy water in Lucifer's throat. So like he's disintegrating from it, and then John breaks open one of the wine bottles that he also used to do this, and he slices him down the front and kicks him into the the holy water.
Well, no, he he doesn't slice him. Like the holy water is literally just like eating him alive, like down the middle,
disintegrating him.
and then he just stabs him in the face with the wine bottle, and then he falls back into the holy water.
Mm-hmm. And John's proud of himself, and then it's after midnight, so his buddy's soul gets to go to heaven. And basically it ends, and he's just like, yeah, I know what I did, like, was great for my friend, but I'm also now, like, mega fucked, because he just, like, tricked the devil.
Yeah, he just beat Lucifer.
Yeah. And so we open up the next issue with him again having a nightmare, which the other one was fucked up. This one is even, like, crazier, this image of him, like, full-bodied with cancer. Like, he's just, like, a cancerous monster.
Yeah,
thing.
he basically looks like John Carpenter, the Thing, right now.
Yeah, I'm dropping it into the chat for you guys. And so this is where we start to get more into stuff that gets borrowed for the movie, or kind of did and then got cut out. So he goes to the beach and he's waiting on someone who sneaks up on him, and he's like, oh, I'm only 50. She's like, I'm only 50 minutes late. And it's his friend Ellie, and they have a conversation, and he's like, oh, do you have anything that can help me? And she's basically giving him the lowdown. It's like, you have no idea how bad you fucked up. He's like, no, I know. He's like, no, you don't know. He's like, he's gonna spend eternity tearing your soul to pieces. Every person he's never been able to get, including Jesus, he's gonna take all that shit out on you for forever. And then he's like, can I ask you a favor? He's like, she's like, oh, I can't do shit for you, but like, she's like gonna say goodbye, and then she's like, no way. It's like, there's 2 things you could do. You could repent, or you can find a way to cure yourself.
This is like this whole scene also just kind of like reminds me of a lot of Dream meeting up with Death on the park bench.
Oh yes, she reminded me of Death so much, like the way she acts and how flippant she is.
I like also it's like, hey, like it's like a cute, like pale skinned, like dark haired, like lady, who's like basically like also like angelic or like demonesque in some way.
Yeah, and there's also like kind of sexual tension there, which this is also where like there's a couple of the panels here which shows like not so great art. But yeah, then like Kim, I don't know what page this is, but like
it's funny because like I think like a lot of the art in this book is like actually like kind of good. Like
there's only a couple. There's a couple faces that are like real wonky.
I think like when they get close up, like I could see like a little bit of the arguments, but I think it's like when they like kind of like pull back. I think the book looks like pretty good. Like also it's like this really just great like big 80s hair is like a style I just kind of miss from like a lot of like these 90s comics.
Oh yeah, because he basically, for I guess anybody who doesn't know, I would say Constantine looks kind of like Billy Idol-ish in his like hair. Like he has that like giant blonde kind of like, although it's not spiked out, it's like blown out. So maybe it's more like a blonde David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust kind of thing going on, where it's like not quite a mullet, but mullet-ish.
Well, he was modeled after Sting, so.
Oh, that's perfect. That's who I'm like. That's a better. Yeah, he looks just like Sting.
I also like this is like the one like close in I really do like where he's like, "You're okay, Ellie. You know what? I mean, considering what it is that you actually are. You're pretty decent. And she's like, I don't think so, John. I think I'm just
I think I'm
polite.
just polite. Yeah. And it's her because what's revealed is she is a demon. And this is a character who they filmed a bunch of stuff for that movie. I'll talk about more next time, and is cut out basically of the movie entirely. And she basically gives him the idea like, oh, you should go see the snob. He's the only person that can help you. And he's like, oh, fuck that guy. He sucks. But yeah.
I'd be like kind of interested to know who she is in the movie.
Oh,
like,
I will
the
tell
actor
you.
that plays her.
I can look it up. But like, yeah, they cut out like an entire plot.
Like we'll talk about it like on the
Next
movie
time.
podcast. Yeah.
So he goes back to go visit Matt. Matt's awesome. Matt tells him some like fucking hilarious shit. Because he's like, oh, I have to go see this snob guy. And he's like, oh, let me tell you a story. I knew someone like that.
Matt's a good bro. I hope nothing bad happens to him.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, we're in this thing. And also he brings cigarettes and booze to Matt.
I also like John Constantine like just has like this really like neat connection with like this like dying old man. Because I think like a lot of like John Constantine is just like he's just perpetually just an old man. Like even like as far as where he's like drawn kind of younger, like I always feel like he's just like has like
he's old soul.
He looks like he's just lived 150 years at all points.
Yeah, that's where I think Matt Ryan does such a good job playing the character, both like animated and in live action, where he just looks like forever burnt out at best.
Just put him on the HBO Max show at this point.
But yeah, I just want to read like so. This like the Matt says like, oh, there was the sod. He treated you like a sod unless you were the officer class. So one of the chaps, anyway, would not long after the Almanian scrap, we're in a platoon. They go to an Arab village. It's like, well, we were actually looting, truth be told. When all of a sudden, a bloody great Jerry Panzer truck comes over the hill. So this guy goes, come on, you men, and shouts. He runs at the damn thing. Can you believe it? He's like, he's got a revolver in one hand. And bugger all else, he turns around to wave us on, and he's alone. We're all friggin' legged, hadn't we? Worth the sod all we may have been, but we weren't thick. Next thing he knows, he's got 10 pounds of explosives off his arse, and his bullocks are halfway to Cairo. And it's just basically like, oh yeah, this guy was an arrogant prick, and so like when he needed people, like they weren't there. Then we have John going to go visit a thing, and there's this weird dude in a top hat, and this is where he does like his first. He's really in this only mesmerism type thing, where he kind of does a Jedi mind trick on the guy. To let him in, and then we have him come in, and then we see his tall figure talking to this like short, chubby figure, and basically John's like, "Oh," to the chubby figure, "I know you. Did you burn down that Pakistani grocer?" And the guy gets all shitty about him and leaves, and he's basically like, "Oh, that guy's a piece of shit. I will have to take mental note of that." And he goes to sit down, which this is it's changed slightly in the film. But almost his entire conversation is in the film. Like, I feel like almost word for word at points. But he has a sit down with this person, and it's like, oh, Kevin. Like, oh, yeah, he's Kevin.
Sorry, like you like cut out like for maybe about like 6 seconds.
Okay, so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just like, I thought I got dropped from the call.
Okay, no, yeah. So he goes to go and he sits down. He's like, "Can I have a beer?" And like, we don't serve beer and like chips and vinegar. So he's like, "Fine, I'll have a gin and tonic." And they have this conversation, and basically that's a tall blonde man. He's like, "Oh, I know what you want." And he's like, and the basic concept, he's like, "Oh, he's paying." He's like, "I don't know why you waste my time on this. You have precious little time left. I'll never fully understand you people." And John's like, "Yeah, no arguments here that you won't understand us."
This is, by the way, on page like 18, on the bottom right panel. This is the first panel where I was just like, "Oof!" Like that's rough.
Oh, the John with the pig nose.
The pig nose. Yeah, I was just like, "Oh, like I see it now."
Yeah. I was like, that is so weird. Like, I guess like he's trying to draw perspective where John's kind of like sticking his nose up, but it looks terrible. And he's basically, John's like, oh, I saw Ellie. She says hello. And they're kind of just like talking. It's like, oh, now we're getting to it. And he's like, so can you help me? And the person's like, no, I'm not. He's like, why not? Well, you're not as cunning as you think you are. You're overrate your importance, and you're believing your own bullshit. And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I mean that you don't deserve any of this. Like, I'm not even in the position to help you, but even if I was, I wouldn't. And John's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't deserve? He's like, I don't owe you any debts. Like, we don't deal in debts. And John like starts to curse him. He's like, quiet, Constantine, and be careful. Like, I've not forgotten what you've done in the past, but as I said, like, debts are meaningless. You overrate yourself. Like, you don't understand. Like, all of you are meaningless. Like, you should leave. And he's basically like, and John's like, well, you deserve me an explanation. He's like, fine. Like, you're dying of lung cancer because you've been smoking 36 cigarettes a day since you were 17 years old, which I'm pretty sure is lifted straight into the movie, that entire line. And you're going to hell because you've done evil. And John just like kind of like taken aback. And it's like, would you like me to remind you of some of it? And John's like, don't trouble yourself. He's like, oh, it's no trouble. You tried to kill your father. You used your friends as shields. You tossed them aside when they were hacked and shattered to wreckage. You dabbled in sorcery and magic, which were forbidden. The 10 Commandments were a joke to you. And John's like, the 10 Commandments? I don't believe I'm hearing this. Jesus Christ is like, you've broken the rules, Constantine. It's as simple as that. And John like freaks out. And it's basically like, oh, like, basically he's like, oh, so there's a scale. And if good isn't higher than or if good doesn't outweigh evil, you don't go to heaven. It's like, that's the problem with you people. Everything's in black and white. Like, you'll never get us. You don't even understand. You make the rules, but like you don't even understand us, and that's what's so screwed up.
I mean, like, and like also it's like the idea, like, not to get too religious on the show, but it's like the idea that like, a very much a lot of Old Testament God is like petty.
Fire. It's petty and fire and brimstone, which this character is. And this is where John's like, oh yeah, like, how well do you really know that guy you were talking to and making deals with? I don't know. I do like what he says. I hope your dad doesn't know the sort of people you're hanging out with, Gabriel, which is where we finally get our reveal of who the snob is. I don't think he'd approve. And then you see like Gabriel kind of do like a look like, oh, I'm going to kind of like magically see what's going on. And then John leaves. Which a huge chunk of this is lifted for the movie, like their conversation. But I do like the idea of like referring to God as the angel's dad. It works well with like the Lucifer TV show as well, which I like. I like because that's like that character is kind of tied into the Sandman Constantine universe. It was a Dark Horse.
Vertigo.
Vertigo. I always mix up those names for some reason.
Which is like, honestly, is like why I never checked out Lucifer in the beginning, because Lucifer in its inception just looked like a shitty crime procedural where they were like, also this detective is also Lucifer, and it's like, okay, like I mean, like I haven't read Lucifer, but I don't think Lucifer was a crime procedural comic.
I'm telling you, I love the show. You should watch it. Every season gets more and more away from that. But yeah, it's also because it's on Fox too.
I'll tell you this: like, of all the DC TV show stuff, like other than like Harley Quinn and Doom Patrol, that I really do kind of want to watch, it's Stargirl, and then basically like second place is like a lot of different shows. Like, really, like if someone were to like kind of like tell me something about like any of these shows, that would make me kind of like interested to hop back in.
I've been watching Lucifer, and that's been pretty entertaining so far. I think I'm on.
And that's all on Netflix, right?
Lucifer, yeah.
And they the first Netflix season came out last year. I think they signed on to do one more, but they're working
more. There's like two more. They're splitting 5 into 2 parts. So part 1 comes out in August, and then they're going to do part 2 of season 5, and then a final season.
But didn't they get didn't that show like get also picked up somewhere else? Like Netflix,
it was on Fox. It went for 3 seasons and got canceled, and Netflix picked it up.
Okay, I thought Netflix was like, well, we're going to end it, and then a third place.
No. That's kind of why Sandman appearing on Netflix makes some sense, and maybe wondering if the reason why Lucifer was, I think they were originally going to end it with the next season, but they've like bumped it out to like a second one to maybe tie in Sandman. There's Lucifer.
Yeah, Sandman showing up on Netflix is like very like I don't understand it. It's like if I
You're gonna hold your breath for it.
no, it's like if I was like it's like if I was AT&T and I had like a property. I mean, like unless like the
I think the
cost
rights have already
Sandman,
moved around so much for Sandman. I don't
like
think they have it.
also well, like also if like maybe Netflix like paid a bunch of money for the license of Sandman, they were like, okay, well we'll just like sell the rights to Sandman to Netflix for them to do like whatever they want. And if the rights revert back to us, like, hey, we have a basis to do whatever we want later on.
Yep. I do have to say, like, if you haven't watched the Crisis stuff yet, like they did a really good surprise tie-in with Constantine and Lucifer that worked really, really well.
The one surprise I did see was like Ezra Miller showing up in Crisis, which I thought was like very fun.
The Lucifer Constantine scene was such a surprise because it had been like leaked, and then Tom Ellis came out and was like, "No, I'm down visiting a friend for a wedding in Canada, and I just happened to meet up with Matt. Like we're not in the scene together."
Yeah, and like, I would say like the cast of the show is fantastic, and they have great chemistry. Two of the people have done like a independent like short film together, like two of the kind of side characters, and they've had great guest cast in the show. Like one of the best ones was what's his name from Psych was in an episode and was fantastic. That guy that played Lassiter, I can't remember his name.
Ormondson. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
John Lasseter played Lassiter.
Yeah.
No, and then they had Jim Rash show up for an episode.
Is Crisis is that like a is that its own series if I were to look it up, or is it like the Flash, like Crisis Part 1?
God, don't get me started.
It's a big problem because it's split up like that, and
Okay,
one of the shows isn't on Netflix, so you can't get all 4 parts.
I mean, like I'll figure out a way. I'll watch. If anything, I'll watch Crisis. Like it's not like it's like I understand these characters like good enough to where I feel like I don't have to watch like 2 or 3 seasons of all these other shows to get what's going on.
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys still there?
No, you still there?
Yep. I was just gonna say, I just want to get back to the comic because we're getting into late in the evening. So the next issue is mostly like John saying his goodbyes to everybody because he's like, that was my last chance. We get to meet Chaz, who's like a Constantine character who's usually like his buddy and driver, who is also in the movie coming up, but is nothing like this version. And basically he says all of his goodbyes and he's like, all this shit is fucked. He goes back to his old.
Is this the one character?
The Boof.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah. And the character also appears in the TV show and in the animated movie that CW did. But this is basically where we had John's like, you know what? Like Matt basically is like, he says his goodbye to Matt and he gets up and shakes his hand and he's like, like, don't worry about regrets, like bugger them all. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you know what? I've been going about this all the wrong way. Like I usually just rely on myself. He goes to his old house and he does the pentagram on the wall and then summons someone. He's like, let's talk. And we get like this whole scene and which is cool. And he has a conversation and then he's like, all right, now that deal's done, it's about an hour. I have to clean up. I have to use different candles because they even smell each other. They'll know what's up. So he summons the second person who's like, he's like, oh, they're the third. The first one was the second, so he calls the third, and they're a shapeshifter. They're all shapeshifters, but he really likes to use it. And he's like, I should not have looked at it that long, and he like throws up and gets sick. And he's like, all right, and the deal is done. And he's basically like, I did it my way. We'll see what's going on. And we end it with him slitting his wrists and Lucifer showing up as evil Jesus, wanting to watch him die.
Oh, that's okay. So I haven't seen this far yet because I didn't get a chance. I read the wrong story, but that's fucking cool.
I'll share a picture. This is also some imagery that they use in the movie, but it's like slightly changed. And so I think we only have like 1 issue left, and then the epilogue issue. If my thing loads, go computers. But basically, what they use is that like. So dripping off. So Lucifer's figure also has its wrist slit, and it's like he says like pissing blood, but it's like black oil almost, and it's like disgusting and like all this stuff. It's really interesting. Shit, my thing is not loading. And this is basically like here we go. Yeah. So he's like, all this is going on, and like he's like, oh, like I tricked you, and you're all pissy about that. And he's like, I'm gonna like destroy you over and over for forever. And then as Lucifer's talking, which there's like this weird like he's bleeding from his eyes, and then there's like weird thorns growing out of his head, I guess. And then we have somebody, so his voices are his voice is in green. And if the next person shows up, it's like, you're trespassing this.
I assume the weird thorns growing out of his head is the crown of thorns.
Crown of Thorns, yeah. The second of the three, so Lucifer's the first of the three. The second of the three shows up, who's like a shadow, and it's like, this one's mine by right. And Lucifer's like, what the shit are you talking about? It's like, oh, I signed a contract with him. And Lucifer's like, what have you done, Constantine? He's like, oh, you haven't seen nothing yet, arsehole. And then we have the blue voice boxes come in, which is the shapeshifter. He's like, oh, like, what are you guys doing here? Like, brothers, I'm the third of the three. This guy's mine. We've signed a contract. So, like, one is Lucifer as, like, evil, bleeding Jesus. One is a shadow blob. And one is, like, who has pink voice boxes. And the other one is a constantly shape-shifting figure with blue voice boxes.
It's basically copyright deadlock, but for your soul.
Yeah. So in every panel it's talking, it changes shape. And basically they're all like, what the hell is going on? He's like, wait, you both signed contracts with him? And Constantine's like, you idiots. Like, you guys were so, like, hyped to get my name. And then they're like, oh, what does, like, Lucifer even have? At least we have contracts. He's like, oh, like, I have rights of insult. And they're like, oh, what did he do to insult you so much? He's like, that doesn't matter. And John's like, oh, I'll tell you guys. I got nothing to do. He's like, I tricked him to drink some holy water. And they start like ripping on Lucifer and laughing at him. And this is basically where he's like, oh, but you guys aren't any better. I tricked you guys too. He's like, you both were like so eager to like have my soul that you didn't even check to see if I'd already sold, like it had already been owned. So now all three of you are owed my soul. And basically gets into this thing where he's created a kind of mutually assured destruction kind of situation. So there's a ticking clock because he's dying. If he die, like, so each one has a claim on his soul, but none can take it. And basically the three of them go and meet in a place where Lucifer then turns back to his like, this is even different. He's like kind of Norman Osborn looking.
Like, yeah, his handsome boy self.
Yeah. And basically they're like, well, we could come to like an alliance. And they're like, we're not going to come to alliance. I fucking hate all of you people. And it's like, well, if we don't come to alliance, does that mean war? And basically we're like, well, if we go to war, we'll all just like weaken each other so much that heaven will just come down and kill us all, like enslave us all. They'll win the war and take over all of creation and put it into like eternal entropy. Which this is where it gets into like real metaphysical craziness. And they're like, oh, and the shadow one's like, oh, we've all been tricked. There's only one thing we can do. Because the only way that this doesn't happen is if he doesn't die. And Lucifer's like, no, I'm not going to do that. He's like, so they're like about to talk and then they pop back into reality because Constantine only has like 2 or 3 minutes left. And he's like, yeah. So at this point, you guys have figured it out. Either if I die, all existence gets taken over by heaven because you guys will kill each other to fight over my soul because you can't split it, or you save my life and none of you get me. And he's like, here, I'll help you guys out. And he cuts his other wrist, or no, he cuts his wrist even deeper, I think, and collapses. And this is where like Lucifer's finally like, shit, fuck. And they're all like, we know it has to be done. There's nothing else to do. This is the only way. And Lucifer basically heals his arms, and this is kind of a crazy scene, which we also get some bad face art here as well. I feel like that's the only time where we get really bad art. It's like some of the faces are really bad. And Lucifer rips open Constantine's body and removes the cancer and then like rebuilds it. And he's like, the rebuilding's even worse. And they're all like shitting on Constantine, but he's just like, yeah, as much as it hurts, he can't even enjoy it because he knows that like I've won. And they heal him and he puts on his clothes and like kind of shit talk him. And he's just like, you guys all got beat. like fuck you, and flips them off. And then that's basically the end of the book, where he outsmarted the three lords of hell and tells them like he's just like, yeah, anything
like a John Constantine typical thing to do.
Yeah, he's basically like yeah, if I die, the entire universe basically ends, because then heaven wins and there's no need for like humanity. Like, you guys won't exist. They even talk about like, oh, like in God's eternal stuff that like he'll probably make us Constantine slaves and like in heaven just to like piss us off. And then we get the epilogue, which is basically like it's Constantine waking up. He's been on a 2-day bender and kind of figures stuff out. He remembers what happened, and he's like, I was kind of egotistical. This is also there's another pig face here in one of these panels. And this is where he gets visited by his third friend from his group with the guy that died earlier on. And she's like, oh, what's going on? And he kind of reminisces about the three of them. I think she was Finn's ex. And they talk about Finn being dead. And then Chaz shows up and he's like, oh, so you're not dead. And he's like, oh shit, I have to like talk to my sister and everybody else who I told dead. And this is when he finally remembers Matt. And he goes to the hospital, and like him and Matt have a conversation. And it's like a pretty good, and Matt's like, you know, friends are really important. That one knows you like good. I've only known you for a little while, but like it's been good. And he's just like, yeah, like you need to keep people close to you, that way you can still play Mystery Man. He's like, oh, can you get the nurse? Like my stomach feels all weird. He goes to get the nurse, and they come up, and he basically like explodes blood and shit from every orifice and like dies a horrible death.
Oh my god.
And this is John kind of putting he also puts together kind of here that like, oh, they're not going to protect me, because that's kind of what he said. He thought they're actually going to like they're trying to find a loophole around it, the three of them. And it kind of implies like, oh, they can make everybody around me, their lives horrible. And they're trying to do so and wait for a way to like for me to slip up to figure this out. And he's like goes and walks in the rain. He basically tells the woman like, oh, leave me alone. You don't want to be by me. And she's like, I know what I'm in for, and like hugs him. But basically he's just like, yeah, I thought in like my kind of like high of like having my cancer cure that like they would kind of protect me to prevent their war, but in fact they're just like setting me up for ways for me to like change things. And you can tell that this is kind of like especially after the other ones, this is like kind of like a weird afterthought book, just to kind of wrap up the loose ends of like to give Matt an ending. I feel like the only part of this that gets really used in the movie is like kind of some of the deaths of characters in that movie. But yeah, it's a really good story. It's like it's not like a Cape and Cow story, and it's not really like a lot of other Constantine like magic-y stories. There's not a ton of magic. It's almost more like not a detective-y story, but it's like it's a weird, very heavy like thoughtful story about like somebody kind of dealing with the idea of dying and like what to do about it. I don't know. I really enjoyed this book, and they did take a lot for the movie, which we'll see when we record that.
I'm excited for that because I've never seen it in its entirety, so I'm excited to watch.
Can I say something?
Yeah, and this is like the first time I've read Hellblazer before. Alan
had said something. Alan, what did you say?
I just want to say that this is the first non-licensed comic I've read in quite a while, and man, was it a blast to read.
All right, cool. Skylar, what were you saying?
Oh, like this is I think this is like the first full arc of Hellblazer I've read. Like I think I've read some of Pierre Milligan's stuff, but like it was like outside of like a few issues and stuff. So yeah, like this was like really fun, and like Hellblazer has always been kind of like one of those big blind spots as a reader for me. So this was like a really nice like kind of thing to.
Yeah. I think this is the first of the original series I've read. Like I've read the current Gaiman Hellblazer. He's not writing it, but it's like he's like the Gaiman verse, Sandman verse version of Constantine. And seeing this old stuff was like makes some of that make more sense because it's that way as opposed to like the Justice League Dark Constantine that I've been used to reading. although you see a bunch of this character in that, like, it's definitely like, oh, that's a kind of not neutered, but like toned down version of that character. And I think looking at like the two live action versions of the character we've gotten, I feel like they're pulling way more from the Hellblazer books than the kind of DC version of the character. I think that's a good thing. I think that's why both actors do a pretty good job being this character, although they're doing slightly different things. Did anybody else have any?
I enjoyed the bit of the story I was able to read. I enjoyed hearing the description. The stuff I did read, which was again the wrong story, it was okay. I've kind of found myself a lot more bored than I was expecting to be. But maybe it's because I'm not used to this kind of story. I'm used to much more of a quicker pace. So
yeah, but that was also not Garth Ennis what you read.
Yeah, that's I think also another reason was what I read was not what I was expecting to read, and it was not as good.
Yeah. So like, but I don't know, like I did like it. It gave me some interest in going back, but I think I would also only read the Ennis part of it. Like I don't like it's also not a character that like I super love. I think I did skip over one part in the book where they kind of sort of when he's talking to Ellie mentioned the elemental, which is like their weird not saying Swamp Thing but talking about Swamp Thing, because I guess they like kind of had like a weird soft continuity in the books at that time at Vertigo. But I thought it was a really good story. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to say before we close out?
No, I'm good.
All right. Do we want to do a quick round of plugs? We could start with Alan. Do you want to give yours?
Yeah, VGU.TV, Players Club podcast, Weekend News podcast, Keeping It 100 with that podcast that Emmett does, and he was on the latest After Dark, if I'm correct.
Yep.
So yes, go there for video game and other stuff.
Siler?
You can find me at JohnJWHN_FN_Siler SEILER, where I talk about stuff that we're announcing for the book company I work for, injustice in the world, probably some stuff that will be happening at the game studios doing like their own E3-esque press conferences. Like, man, I'm definitely very excited for what Devolver has on Saturday because it's gonna be good.
All right, John Scott.
Find me on Twitter, JMScott193. If anyone uses the site Letterboxd, I am keeping track of our Phantom Zone watch parties through that website. Let me find it really quickly because I actually don't remember my film_fan93. I pretty much have the list of all of what we've watched and what are links to our watch party YouTube tracks if anyone wants to take a listen to those.
Yep. So yeah, don't forget to listen to all the other shows. Me and Alan also do Smallville Chronicles. And yeah, we should be recording the watch party for Keanu Constantine this week, and it'll be coming out next week for you guys. And yeah, don't forget to rate, give 5 stars, and all that good stuff, and tell a friend. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Stay constant clean, all y'all.
So I guess I'll join the Great Lakes of